Everyone is talking about anti-Semitism today. It seems to have increased in many different areas. It's coming from all different directions. And it behooves us to understand what is the root of anti-Semitism. Many books have been written about this, but let's see how our Torah addresses this issue of anti-Semitism. Actually, there's more than one root to anti-Semitism. There's a story in the Talmud, discussion in the Talmud, about Purim. Achashverosh was more than willing to sign a decree that would have all Jews annihilated. So it wasn't just Haman, it was also Achashverosh. But the Talmud says that they had different reasons for their hatred of the Jewish people, and it compares it to a person who had a mound in middle of a field that he just purchased, and it made it impossible to cultivate the field, to plow it. And another person bought property that he wanted to cultivate that had a big ditch in it, and that prevented him from plowing it. So the person who owned the land with the hill on it, with a mound, wanted to get rid of it and was willing to pay anyone to take it off his hands. And the one with the ditch was willing to buy a mound of earth to fill up the ditch. So they come together and one obliges and satisfies the needs of the other. And the Rabbi explained that these are metaphors for different reasons for anti-Semitism. One anti-Semite feels that he has a big ditch in his heart, in his soul, because he sees the Jewish people, he sees how beautiful they live their lives, such righteous, moral, ethical lives, exalted, uplifted lives, and it makes him feel deficient. And instead of trying to emulate the Jew, not necessarily converting to Judaism, but emulating the moral and ethical standards, it just makes him feel very empty. And therefore he finds a way of filling in that void by getting rid of the Jews. And the other anti-Semite looks at the Jews as superfluous, trespassers. They're like a mound on their turf. Where does that begin? That began with Asev and Yaakov, the struggle between Yaakov and Asev, which comes to a head in this week's Torah portion, Parshas Vayishlach. What do we read? That Yaakov is transporting his whole family and is confronting Asev, preparing himself to confront Asev. He prepares himself by dividing the camp into two, so if one is defeated, the other one will escape. He prays, and he offers an elaborate gift to Asev, his brother. And then we find something a little anomalous, a little strange, that Yaakov is left alone, and he's attacked by a person, which of course we know is not just a person, but an angel. It was the angel of Asev, Asev's personal angel, that was there to take up Asev's cause and try to destroy Yaakov. They wrestle all night, and he can't prevail. So he strikes him in his thigh, dislocates a socket in his thigh, the sciatic nerve, which is the basis for the law of kashrus, that we don't eat the sciatic nerve of an animal. But Yaakov doesn't let him go. And they're struggling all the way until dawn. And he wants to go, and Yaakov doesn't let him go until he gives him a blessing. He changes his name from Yaakov, which means heel, to Israel, which means you'll be in charge, you'll be a sar, a minister in control of God and people. You will be on the top. And then he lets him go. What was this angel so eager to leave? Because an angel is a messenger of God. Angel is not independent. And he wanted to sing praise to God in the morning, as is the custom of angels. What is this all about? And then there's another enigmatic midrash. The midrash says that why did he strike him in his lower part of his body? Because he was really trying to give him a message to look into the future. Jacob should look at his progeny, and he should see that one of his descendants, or two of his descendants, will be Nadav and Avihu, the two elder sons of Aaron who died as they brought an unauthorized offering in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, in the portable sanctuary in the desert. And a fire from heaven descended and struck them and killed them. He wanted Jacob to know about that future event. What is this all about? This is very enigmatic. And the Midrash is known for giving us enigmatic teaching, so it forces us to look a little bit deeper into the narrative to see that there's a message, a hidden message. What was the crux of the dispute between, and another question before we go on any further, if the angel of Asev was upset, as Asev was, that Jacob stole his blessings and that he took his birthright from him years before that, which is what Asev said himself, that what was wrong with Jacob? Jacob is a deceiver. He stole my blessings with using deception, and years before that, he had stolen my birthright. So that was the real bone of contention between Asev and Jacob. And now the angel is taking up for Asev. Why did the angel wait 20 years? Jacob was 20 years in Haran, and now he's returning. And even as he's returning, he doesn't attack him right away. It's when Jacob is all alone. And another question is, why was Jacob all alone? He was traveling with his family. How did he become isolated from his family? The answer to all these questions brings us back to the subject of anti-Semitism, the model of the mound, the trespassing model. This is really traced back to the story of Yaakov and Asev. What was Asev's thinking? What was he thinking about when he sold birthright for a pot of lentils? And the Torah makes it very clear. Vayivez Asev es habchora. Asev despised the birthright. To him, it was worthless. He would give it away for almost nothing, because he didn't consider the birthright to have any value. And then all of a sudden, years later, he's complaining that Jacob stole his birthright. You didn't like the birthright. You didn't want it. What had changed? So it's obvious, as commentators point out, that Asev had the wrong idea of what the birthright entailed. In Asev's mind, the birthright was purely a spiritual gift, that the firstborn was required to carry on the legacy, the spiritual legacy of his father and grandfather, and that Yaakov, he felt, was really suited for that. Asev did not want to have any part in this spiritual legacy. In fact, on the very day that he's coming from the field to eat those lentils, to sell the birthright, he had committed some heinous crimes. And what day was that? That was the day Abraham passed away. What could be worse than on the very day that your beloved grandfather passes away, acting in the most antithetical ways to the values of Abraham, committing murder and other heinous crimes, as our sages tell us. So that means that Asev says, I don't want the gift of birthright. And he says, I'm going to die. What did he mean by that? He says, I'm interested in this world. What you get in the spiritual sense of the birthright is for the next world. I'm not interested in things that are happening in the next world. The next world can mean the world of the soul without the body. In paradise, it can mean the world of the future messianic age. I want this world. And the birthright doesn't give me this world. A pot of lentils is this world. It will satisfy my hunger, and that's my life. My life is to satisfy my hunger and my physical, material needs. But when Jacob gets the blessings, and the blessings were material blessings, God will give you from the fat of the earth, the dew of the heaven and the fat of the earth, and so on and so forth. He says, what's going on over here? Jacob can't have both. He can't have the birthright that gives him the distinction in a spiritual vein, and at the same time to also be endowed with the benefits of this physical world. He says that you can't have that. You either have one or the other, and we'll split them up. I'll take this world, you take the next world. But when Jacob became wealthy, when Jacob was blessed with wealth and material wealth, that is something to him was like a mound. You're trespassing. It's my turf. And that we see with some of the anti-Semites, that there's enough for everyone. You could prosper and be wealthy, but if the Jew is wealthy as well, he says he has no right to that wealth. If the Jew is a doctor, what right do you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or a business person, whatever profession there is, whatever type of vocation that involves the physical world? The anti-Semite, who's a spiritual heir of Asev, says that's not yours. Yours is the next world. My world is all of these things. And no matter how much ample opportunities there are for everyone, the Jew, by very definition, by his very existence in this physical world and enjoying the physical world, is a usurper, is a trespasser, and has to be eliminated. And in some cases, totally eliminated, as was the case with the Holocaust, where the intention was getting rid of all the Jews. The Jews who lived in Germany were very prosperous, contributed immensely to the German culture, the German everything. They had the greatest acts of heroism in World War I, and they were given these medals. They fought for the fatherland of Germany. They were loyal citizens. They prospered, and they made the country prosper. No, a Jew doesn't belong to this world. He's not entitled to any part of it. And now we can understand why the angel confronted Jacob precisely at a point when he was alone, and we'll soon see why he was alone, and he waited until that time to confront Jacob, and why he asked Jacob to reflect on the future about his descendants, Nadav and Avihu. This will all come together. The reason why he was all alone, the Talmud tells us, and Rashi cites this, he realized that he forgot some small jugs behind. So he crossed over the river that he had crossed in this direction. He crossed back to retrieve those jugs. Just a few trinkets, almost worthless jugs. And the Talmud says, from this we see that tzaddikim, righteous people, cherish their material possessions, sometimes even more than their own bodies. He risked his life to cross over to be all by himself. What for? Because he wanted not to lose even the small trinkets. And it's classic anti-Semitism to accuse Jews of wanting money that they'll even pick up pennies from the ground. There's a kernel of truth in that accusation, because that's not a new accusation. That accusation was leveled by Asav's angel. Look what you're doing. You're going back for a few worthless trinkets. That means the material world is so valuable to you. You don't want to lose a few pennies? You're going to risk your life for a few pennies? That underscored the very essence of the dispute between Asav and Yaakov. That Yaakov is usurping Asav's territory by showing not only enjoying this world, that would be bad enough to Asav, that Yaakov can enjoy this world, but being obsessed with this physical world, that's not your role. That is my role. You stick to the shul, you stick to the synagogue, to the house of study, to the Beit HaMidrash, you stick to doing mitzvahs, meditating, being spiritual, praying. Don't meddle with my affairs. Don't trespass. And that's why he showed him the future of Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu died because they were so spiritual that they were willing to let their souls leave their bodies in their goal, in their aspiration to become absorbed in godliness. And the Talmud and the Midrash tell us that Nadav and Avihu, because they were so spiritual, eschewed this whole physical world. They didn't get married. They didn't want to have children. They did things that were completely, they denounced this physical world for the spiritual world, to the point where they actually allowed their souls to leave their bodies. This wasn't a punishment for them. as explained by the Or HaChaim in Hasidic literature, that they had a fire from heaven come down and consume them. They allowed themselves to be consumed in that fire. That was their goal. That was their objective, to leave this world. So Asav's angel says, Yaakov, that's who you should be following, your progeny's example, that you should want the next world. You don't care for this world. So as long as you're here, you'll get some crumbs. But that's enough. Suffice. That should suffice. Why do you want to have this world so badly? And why did you steal the blessings? And that's why he waited. He waited until Jacob demonstrated in his mind how materialistic he is. But Asav was wrong, and Asav's angel was wrong, because Yaakov was not at all involved and cared about material matters. The only reason the Jew wants the material matters, and yes, we do want to live a good life, a material good life, is because they are the vehicles through which we bring the world closer to God, in which we create a dwelling place for God. We make the physical world into something spiritual. We bring the future into the present. We bring Mashiach, the Messianic age, into the present. The Messianic age will be a physical age. We'll have all the delights in the world, but we won't be looking at them as physical delights to satisfy our hedonistic pleasures. We will look at the physical world as the vehicles that bring us closer to God, number one. And number two, it will be transformed into an edifice, a palace for the divine, and not just a physical world without any purpose and objective. That's the deception of the Jew. The Jew may compete with the non-Jew with material pursuits, but it's a completely different kind of pursuit. And that's why Jacob, when he was able to hold the angel and wrestle, keep him down, and the angel says, let me go, Jacob did not let him go until he blessed him and says, yes, you are a master. What does that mean, you're a master? In what way do we want to be masters? The Maimonides writes, we didn't look forward to Mashiach so we can be in control of other people. We don't have any agenda. We don't have any aspirations of taking over the world and conquering countries and having all this power. We wanted, Rambam writes, the prophets and the sages wanted the future world because it's a world that would enable us to become better Jews, to serve God, to study Torah, to connect to God, and do so within the context of the physical world. That is our aspiration. We have no need to conquer the world for our own physical needs. And that's what Yisrael means. That's what the word Israel means. Israel means we conquered the spiritual and the physical, to turn them both into one unit, to bring total unity between the physical and the spiritual. And that will be fully realized by the whole world, that's really our goal, that's really our agenda, if we want to use that term. And therefore, nobody is losing anything. In fact, by changing the world, it becomes a better world for the entire world's population. Everyone will benefit from the blessings that we receive, provided we take the physical and we use it for the spiritual. And that's the answer to the anti-Semites. The anti-Semites are upset when a Jew becomes secularized. So he attacks every Jew, including the Jew who is totally spiritual. He doesn't care. But when a Jew shows that our greatest achievement is to win a Nobel Prize in physics and chemistry and medicine, that doesn't get the anti-Semite to become impressed with us and to hate us less. On the contrary, that just aggravates the situation. It exacerbates it, because that points to the fact that we have inherited this physical world in a way that they feel we're not entitled to. That was not part of the deal with Yaakov and Asev. But when we show that our pursuits in winning Nobel Prizes is directed to something higher and holier, when we conquer it for God, as it were, that will alleviate that form of anti-Semitism. And we soon see the end of all hatred in this world with the imminent coming of Mashiach.